I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, I'm all you need. In the off-white Rari, baby, we run the streets. I'm a K-I-N-G, Westside royalty. I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, that's all you need. I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, I'm all you need.
Welcome back, everybody. I am your host, Stephen Basita, on my podcast, Get It, and we are on the Social Nostra Network. Make sure that if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, comment. If you're watching this on Instagram, please just make sure you follow us. And of course, we've got all of our other channels and options. We're also on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Pandora. Welcome. Thank you so much for listening today on the little podcast today. We're doing it about parents of athletes. And today my guest is also the founder of the Social Nostra Network, Kevin Perkins. And he is one of the more capable people of being able to even speak this topic for two reasons. A, he has been a coach, but B, his daughter, who I used to be a strength conditioning coach for, Ava, she was a Division I water polo player over at Hawaii University. And so we're going to speak a little bit today about, man, and this is really great for everybody. It's great for kids, it's great for parents, it's great for coaches, but what should the involvement be from a parent standpoint? And we're going to really kind of conquer through the different age gaps. I'm also a parent myself of two younger girls, so Kevin's going to have a little bit more experience in this world. But just from a coach perspective, I've been a coach, and I've coached kids at 4 years old all the way through kids getting ready to go to college, seniors in high school, juniors, sophomores, freshmen, that whole thing. And there is going to be a big difference in how you as parents should be involved in your life, in the life of your child through their athletic career. And for kids, also understanding what's going to be most helpful. You know, one of the biggest things too is there's all this material now out in the world, especially for coaches like myself who compete in NCAA live periods. We're required every year to do an 8-hour training course, and it changes every year. But one of the biggest things is about really, from a coaching perspective, how we should be with our players, the science behind what is actually the best way to coach, especially when you break down like after games. A lot of coaches can be very negative and harsh, but there's actually a science to it about starting with something positive, doing your critiques and your criticisms, and then ending with something positive, as well as, again, stuff about parents. And so for us as coaches and former coaches, and of course the father of a Division I athlete, you know, what is the space that you should fit into in regards to all this? But without further ado, Kevin, how you doing, my man?
What an intro. Whoa. Hey, brother. I'm really good. How are you doing?
Doing good. It was an interesting morning. Before we started this whole thing, I was telling Kevin, I've never actually had to shovel snow in my life. And I just finished shoveling my SUV out of snow for the last half hour. So that was very exciting. I'm excited that I will.
It's better than shoveling, you know what?
That's true. That's real true.
I mean, let's be honest. But Stephen, bro, I'm really glad that you reached out to me. Obviously I have my own show on this network. You know, I'm doing, lots of podcast type stuff. I just kind of recently closed this chapter, so it's really fresh in my mind. So it's really fortuitous that you asked me to, talk about, the topics that you have today.
Yeah. So really quickly, I just want people to have context. So let's talk about your coaching career real quick. So When did you coach? What were the age group? And then let's talk about a couple of those challenges that you had with parents during that time.
Yeah, for sure. So I got started in coaching actually pretty young. Right out of high school, I was actually an assistant coach to the high school that I had just graduated from as kind of a job, while I was going to college type of a thing, earn a little stipend, be around the sport, get in and, mess around with everybody. I played water polo and I swam. So I went to San Clemente High School and then ended up going to UC San Diego. I was actually on a track to go to USC for a while, and then just kind of the way that, we can talk about this, the way that the monetization aspect happened or didn't happen, I had to make a different choice. So when I was doing my coaching, I was, kind of just leaning on a lot of stuff, like growing up as a kid. My mom and a lot of people in my family were teachers. So I felt like, I kind of had it in the blood a little bit to be able to help people, and teach them the ropes, and having a lot of empathy and being able to kind of understand where they are as a player, and then be able to help them the way that I wanted to be helped when I was that player. Right. So building upon that, I actually had an interesting period where I kind of just pushed the sport completely away for about 10 years, really, where I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with the sport. Like, let's talk about that in a minute. But like, I came back into it once my kids were there, and I started again helping with the high school. And then as they got older, I was saying, okay, girls, you don't have to play water polo. You can do what you want to do. And somehow it's just like The Godfather. It just sucked me back in, and I was doing it all over again. But it's all good because that's the dance. And so as a former athlete that becomes the coach, like, that's the dance you do. It's a love-hate type of thing. I started coaching age group. I was back to coaching high school again. I had done some junior college coaching at Saddleback. So I was just kind of like, nothing spectacular in terms of high level coaching. But I mean, I did feel like I helped a lot of kids over a long period of time. I have kids that became Olympians, not because of me, but, they got started with me, as 10 and unders or 12 and unders or whatever, national champions, whatever. So for me, it's been a fun road to start and then become part of that with my own kids.
Okay. So now that we have that context, so what were some of the issues that you've encountered with parents during that time when you were coaching your kids too?
Right. So, it's interesting. Coaching as a profession, or even teaching, really, if you're in the classroom, you really get a broad spectrum of like society in the world. Right. And basically, I noticed when I was coaching in the 90s, the parents were still pretty mellow. They were really kind of just, hey, how can we help you? There was some criticism, but it wasn't like, hey, my kid's not playing enough. Blah, blah, blah. It was, hey, that was great. And it was a little bit more passive in terms of the angst that parents might have towards coaches and stuff like that. I didn't really see a whole lot of like parenting happening in the stands, coach dads in the stands, yelling at their kid to do a certain play against what the coach is saying. That didn't really happen. But then fast forward maybe into the 2000s, into the teens, it was like a quantum shift that way, a different way. It was just like, culturally speaking, everybody felt like they were entitled to, replays, and that call wasn't right. And so I just feel like a little bit on the negative side towards parents in terms of just how they've approached sports over time, as a coach. And then also like as a player, as a parent. My daughter was part of a club that actually went through a program called PCA, Positive Coaching Alliance. And they actually work with USA Water Polo. They work with all the main organizations, but you can hire people to come in and kind of give you a framework on how to be a good parent. And so we were fortunate enough to kind of get a reset, because as parents, even though I was a coach, we were still kind of like going down that path where our kid is like going to be a superstar or whatever, and like, I think every parent kind of gets sucked into this. Like, I got to push my kid. I got to get him a scholarship. They got to go to the Olympics. They got to become a professional. Like, it's just totally like black and white now. So whereas in the 90s, so just to answer the question more fully, in the 90s, it was still fun. It was still, team sports, community, and that type of thing. And now fast forward, I feel like the the state of where we are as, club, maximize your own personal gains. And hey, so what if, you bail on a coach or a team or a community?
Yeah. So, it's interesting because you kind of conquered a few different things, especially given time periods. Now, especially now, I would say, parents, you get kind of those three groups of parents. And I do kind of group all my parents into three groups. You get the parents that are just the silent ones. They're going to support their kid. They're not going to say anything. If they're not happy, they'll just leave. But they'll bring their kids to practice. They'll bring their kids to games. They're just not going to say anything. Then you get the parents that they're always talking to you. Well, what could my kid do better? How can we make sure we're positioning them into being a professional athlete? Like what can they do to maximize their playing? And I have these conversations every day. And then you get the parents that are just always negative about everybody else's kids to try and boost their kid, right? And I don't talk to parents about other players. And so when parents start that, I'm like, look, we can talk about your child. I'm not going to compare your child to other children. These are kids. In high school, I have a very firm policy, and it's your kid is a young adult. They can talk to me. You don't get to.
Yeah.
You want to talk to me about the weather? You want to talk to me about a dinner you went to last night? You can talk to me about life. When it comes to your kid, unless your kid's present and they're asking me the question and you want to be there, you don't get to talk to me about your kid's playing time. If they have a struggle with grades or life or something, by all means, I'm here for them. But when it comes to what's going on the court, we're not going to talk about that. That's their responsibility. And because of that, parents don't talk to me about their kid, which is very good for their kids because they have to learn being accountable. But
that's the other thing too about this is that parents have over time felt like they're entitled. Okay, big word there, entitled to have direct communication, one-on-one bestie level, comfort with the coach.
Right.
And, when I was coming up and probably when you were coming up, coaches were like gods, bro. They were on the same tier as like policemen, firemen, whatever, that respect tier. And
Definitely.
That's just gone. Like now it's just like parents feel like they, I pay my club fees, so I get to be however I like, dude. It's really bad in some sports. I can't say that for all sports, and I don't want to like broad brush every type of parent, but that is definitely a cultural shift, a quantum shift that we've had where I think I'm kind of glad I'm far removed now from being the coach side and also on the parent side, because, we can talk about like the younger kids and the middle school kids, but like once you get to like the higher level stuff, it's embarrassing, dude, when you're like in like a high level game and you've got some parent that's acting like AYSO when their kid's 5, screaming and hollering from the stands and actually in many cases, cussing and being really rude or picking fights with other people, it's like, it doesn't need to go there. This is amateur sports.
100%. So I have parents sign a contract now about etiquette and policies. And also I'm pretty good about filtering out families. If there's too many problems, we just say we're not the right club for you. I've been really blessed. So in retrospect to a lot of other programs, I do have a phenomenal group of families. We really don't have too many problems. But, what I will say is prepare for the best or prepare for the worst, plan for the best. And you just got to take each situation that comes. But, communication is huge, and just being able to talk to parents and set realistic expectations. The other thing too is, like you said, so many parents think their kids are going to play pro sports. The reality is it's never been harder.
So let's talk about that. So when the kids are like 5 and 6 and they're doing AYSO for the first time and they're all bumblebeing around the ball and all the parents are on the side of the field and they're cheering and having fun and high-fiving each other. And then, hey, let's go get a beer afterwards. That vibe of sport is where we need to be back to. Like, it's totally, and so as those kids get older and they start to get into middle school, that's when parents sort of kind of lose their marbles. They start thinking like, my kid's got to be in the pros or get a scholarship, right? Like if they just work really hard, they're going back to like when they were in college, when there actually was like college scholarships that paid for stuff, or when that college was affordable. Now the college scholarship is you just getting in and you getting like a free pathway, so you don't have to do a bunch of essays and stuff like that the coach basically like signs you in. Maybe you get some gear, maybe you get, like, after being in the program a few years, a VIG if you're in the core sports of football, basketball, and baseball. But like, seriously, like, people have the wrong impression. And I kind of fault coaches that are at the middle school level who are basically trying to make a living. They're building up clubs and stuff, and they're pushing kids to be like, hey, your kid, and I've heard this story so much. Well, your kid's pretty good, and it's a tease to the parents, like, get your extra trainings, get your privates, get your, this or that. And really all that is just sustenance for them to keep, coaching without, being realistic about what's the percentage of kids that actually get to D1 or pros. It's super small.
Well, just for D1, it's less than 0.04%.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So when we went through, around middle school, when we went through PCA training, the club actually made it mandatory for all the parents and family to do that. And they would take all the parents into one room and all the kids in the other room. And they had different tracks for each thing. And this isn't a commercial for PCA, because there are some things that I don't necessarily agree with fully on that score, but it's basically like a reset on teaching you how to have manners at a sporting event.
Right.
Like you should be able to clap for the other team when they score without it being like, or any of that stuff. Right. Like, we don't even have that as a culture right now. It's sad.
Always divisive, man. It's us versus you kind of thing. But a couple of things you talked about too. It is really hard. I mean, people need to understand it is very hard to get in college. And, even out, football and basketball are the two, for men, are the two main sports that finance the rest of the sports. So they have a little bit more in the way of scholarships. But you're right, not everybody gets a scholarship. A lot of times you're going to have to work your way up to getting a full scholarship. You're going to get a little something. But, yes, and coaches definitely do the whole thing where they're trying to get the privates and all that because they want to make their living off of coaching. And that's definitely part of it. And then there's the other part that's like, I hate to say this, if you're not doing that stuff, you're definitely not going to play college. And it's just
listen, I understand the logic, but I mean, dude, there's some really unscrupulous coaches.
Like, a lot of coaches take advantage, especially club coaches. I'm a club coach. I hate to throw club coaches under the bus, but they definitely do. They're always pushing for kids to do more and more and more with them, and pay more and more. And I tell parents, like, look, when you're going through this process of finding, you want your kid to play college, they want to play college, cool. I tell parents, like, look, you can train with me. I'll train your kid once a week, twice a week, whatever. But I'm going to give them stuff they need to do every day. They don't need to train with me every day. And that's the difference between a smart, consistent coach who knows how to develop people and then somebody trying to take you for all your money.
Oh, yeah.
Wise.
Well, and that's another thing too, is like, you hear so much of this in the political world about, inequity and stuff like that. But dude, think about like all the players that are really good. They're all very rich. Their families. We were just watching The Weight of Gold on HBO Sports. Yeah. That's with, all the different Olympians and the trials and tribulations they've had. And one of the facts that really kind of stood out was like, we get a mediocre stipend. Like, it barely covers food, whereas like other countries are basically like, treating them like they're, civil servants and paying their salaries and housing, and they're treated like real human beings. Whereas like in the amateur system, we don't really have an infrastructure. So I kind of blame that a little bit too, in that we make it like it's so glorious to become these high level athletes, but at the same time, we don't give them any infrastructure to not only become those athletes, but also afterwards. Like they really talked about the mental aspect of when you eventually have to hang it up. Like every athlete has to go, all right, peace out, I'm done. Right. And like, that's what I was referring to earlier, is like, you can have an array of emotions about that. You can be like super stoked. Hey, that was a great experience. You stay on with the sport. Maybe you're an ambassador, you become a coach or whatever. Maybe you get depressed, and that's a big one. Like, geez, I don't have any purpose anymore. I was this automaton just working out all the time. And now what? I don't have anything because I spent all my days doing my 10,000 hours to become, whatever I was trying to become. Right. And then even on the far end of the spectrum, like you've got people who are like, F this, I don't want to do this. And, I don't have anything to do with this anymore. That's just a complete push away. Right. And there's no like, if there's going to be a singular like specialty training exercise that any athlete should do, they should get a sports psychologist. Or a sports counselor.
Yeah, we have a sports psychologist for all of my high school kids that they see a couple times a year. And the parents get to see the same sports psychologist a couple times a year, because balance is so critically important. And again, the parents need to understand their balance, right? Like, so, one of the things I think that's really important is, if you are a parent of an athlete, listen to what I'm telling you right now, because this is very important for you. And you need to understand this. I don't care if you agree with it. You need to learn how to wrap your head around doing this. Because if you don't, you're going to set your kids up for failure more often than not. Kids that I say are 5th grade and below. Okay, 5th grade and below, boys and girls. They're an athlete, 5th grade and below. Just love them. You can definitely encourage them. You can give them some critiques. You can help point stuff out. You are the parent. You do see things. A lot of, obviously, kids that play sports 5th grade and below are not playing for high-level coaches. It's usually rec leagues, that kind of stuff. Even if they are playing for some maybe better coaches, the big point is, as a parent, you can be involved from a standpoint of helping encourage your kid to go outside and do whatever work they need to do it with them. You can definitely help critique them. At that point, you should know a little bit about the sport. If you don't, then pay someone to do it. But you should be able to be involved and help them and just really be the rock that they can lean on. You should be their advocate from the point of helping them develop and grow. And if you do see that your kid's struggling, yeah, definitely talk to the coach and ask about some stuff that they could do to benefit themselves and help themselves if it's something they really want to do. That's important. And I would say, parent involvement at that point is pretty important. 6th grade, so junior high, 6th grade to 8th grade, the role of the parent should very much be encouraging their child through the struggles they're going to have at that point, because it does get a little bit more competitive and you are preparing for high school, so to speak. So encouraging them, guiding them. Again, if you need extra help, finding it for them, finding the right person, the right fit that's really going to help. And the dream, if the dream is pro, which for most kids it would be, then it needs to start, you as a parent need to start helping set the realistic expectation. Well, how are we going to get you into high school playing on the fresh soft team, or maybe even getting on to JV right away and playing JV your freshman year, maybe starting on JV your sophomore year, or maybe you do make it to varsity and then trying to figure out how you can be a starter your junior year on varsity and senior year. That's the framework that it should be. When you're in. So
before you hop into high school, let me add my perspective on junior high, because I think, having gone through it as a parent, so basically I got my kids to a point where, Coach Dad was no longer really the right choice, right? I mean, granted, I played at a fairly high level in my game, but, they get to that age, they're not listening to mom and dad. So They really do need to be pushed into a direction of some coach that really understands what your parenting values are. Like, that's super important. Like, as a parent, you have to understand, like, okay, I want them to basically exit with, the best work values. I want them to have, good being on time skills. I want them to respect themselves and other people, blah, 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 whatever those values are. For me, like, I think as a parent though, like, it's important that, you understand what your place is. And this is the game changer. The junior high years are the game changer, because you're like basically going through, like, being all happy and let's go. You're cheerleading your kid, and now you're making that inflection point. Are they going to go down the sports path or are they not? Right. I mean, that's bottom line. Like, it used to be in high school, but now it's really junior high.
It is.
So you basically at that point go, okay, as a parent, I'm going to commit to going to clubs, trainings, privates, educate, blah, 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 which is really its own job beyond parenting. Okay. And if you don't do that, like, if you want your kid to just be having fun, then you're just more of a taxi service and just like, okay, go to games whenever you can go, or enter tournaments whenever you can go. But when you're on the other path, you travel, you go to every freaking tournament there is. You are super committed. And like, we used to, as a family, we were all, marching in the same direction. We used to have people being like, you guys are crazy. You're spending all your weekends in Riverside when it's, the middle of summer and it's super hot. Like, yeah, that's what you do. Like, you've got to do that in order to get to this level.
Right.
Now, in hindsight, now that we're past that, we were pretty freaking crazy. I got to tell you, like, maybe I don't know. I'd have to really rethink that whole philosophy. But I think that inflection occurs in the junior high years.
It does. And I would wrap up with saying, for junior high, as parents, you have a little wiggle room to help with your kids. And like, if your kid's staring at the ground when they're dribbling the ball down the court, as a parent, like, hey, look up. The coach can only do so much, right? And that's okay. Like, it's okay to give like a small generalized critique of your kid. But I would say that you got to understand, like, we're talking like, that's what you're saying. You're not telling your kid to take 20 shots in a game. That's not what the coach is telling them. And you need to start respecting the boundary of parent and coach. But high school, your only job is to be a parents. Understand this. When your kid is in high school playing sports, your only job is to be a support system. If you cannot be a support system, don't go watch them play anymore, because all you're doing is creating problems for your kid, problems for the coach, and you're creating a future head bashing between you and your child. And I've seen it happen more times than I can count. And every parent thinks the same way. Oh, well, it's not going to happen to us. Yes, it is. It's just a matter of when. It's not a matter of if. And if you are telling yourself when you're listening to this that that's not true, it is, and you're going to find out the hard way if you don't change your attitude and your behavior in regards to that. Your only job in high school is to be their cheerleader and to be the ears to listen when they need to vent or complain about something. Your job's not even to do anything about it. You're just to listen. Your kid needs to be the one that goes and takes care of that with the coach.
Absolutely. And so when we got to the junior high years and we as a family decided that, this was going to be the path that, both of our girls went on, I stopped coaching because innately I found myself in the stands, because being a player, being a coach, and now being a parent, like, I know too much about what's going on. Right. Like, I know what's going on underwater. I know what's going on above water. I know the coaches personally. I know the referees personally. So at some point, like, it becomes we used to call it polo ticks, because it's disgusting to see some of these coaches who are like, hey man, that call, and it's their friend, right? Especially at like the AAU level or whatever. Right. And then all of a sudden, like, the refs are calling it a completely different way. It just creates this massive chaos within what's supposed to be a very structured, environment.
Correct.
For me as a parent, like, that drove me crazy, because like, my daughter played my position. Both of my daughters played inside in 2 meters in water polo. And you're basically the center. You get beat up on. People are going after the ball, hitting you on the head. And my youngest got a concussion. And so like, as soon as she got that concussion and started to heal from that, like going back into the sport, we were like, oh my God, we don't want her to get hit on the head again. And so every time that thing I was just saying where the refs are like, ignore, we're going to let stuff happen. That's when I kind of like was no longer the quiet parent, right? Because it's like, I know that was a kick out, a foul or whatever, a gross, move over the head. That should be out. That shouldn't happen. It's the ref's responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. And so there's a lot of times where as a parent with those three qualities, I was just like, I had to sit on my hands or like go take a walk or whatever, because my wife's like, dude, you need to chill out. I was like, at one point I started to stand on the other side of the pool deck away from everybody because I'd be like,
And the third thing too is, just even talking about refs, like, look, I run tournaments, so I hire ref companies and I know all the refs. I've been doing this a long time. And as a coach, I don't usually say much to refs. But to speak of refs, these are people that are taking time. They all have full-time jobs, mind you. Okay. These are people that are just trying to make a little extra money for their family. They want to be around the sport. I would say that most refs have good intentions. Not all. Okay. I'm not defending all refs. I'm saying most refs have good intentions. You chipping away at the refs isn't going to do anything. They're not going to change their calls. And all you're going to do is piss them off, and then they're going to start making calls against your organization. Let the coaches talk to the refs. The other thing, too, is like I have it for our tournaments. We have a rule that whatever ref company we use, refs are not allowed to refs are not allowed to ref more than 6 games. That's it. You get 6 games. If you do 6 games in a row, fine, because the quality goes down after those 6. We've, done a lot of research.
That's a good rule. I like that rule, actually.
But we rotate refs. So,
yeah, because in water polo, dude, they would hire one ref, and that dude would do all of the games for the whole day a lot of times. And they're burned out by the end of the day. And
so by the time those kids play those later games, they're not going to call them. They're exhausted. Their mind is probably numb. They couldn't tell you if you ask them about stuff. They probably don't even know because their mind is just shot. And so for us,
it's true.
We just learned, look, we got to make sure that we're taking care of the teams that are playing, and we got to make sure we're taking care of the refs. And for the refs, it's like, look, we know what your capacity is. This is what it is. We're not taking refs that if you've done 6 games, you're not doing anymore. And we usually encourage that they get a 1-game break. So the companies that we use, I've been very adamant, and I said, look, this is how I want it structured. This is your team, these are your guys. However, if we're not on the same page with how I want this run, I'm not going to use you. And again, it goes back to quality of the ref. Refs get tired. They're humans. They make mistakes. They don't always see everything. You don't know what the ref's looking at. And for basketball, there's 10 kids on the court with 2 refs. One person's tracking the ball, one person's trying to see what else is going on. But the reality is there's so much going on. And, listen, the refs don't make I've been coaching for 15 years. I've had tons of missed calls, tons of wrong calls. The only time I actually talk to the refs, this is the only time I talk to the refs, is when it's a consistency issue.
Yeah.
The consistency being we're getting foul calls for something that the other team's not getting foul calls for. Right. So it's as long as they're consistent, either calling the same stuff or not calling the same stuff, I'm fine. I've only talked to refs when it comes to like high school stuff about consistency and then physicality. When I can see that they're letting too much go and kids are starting to get really chippy, there's starting to be some of the like push in and altercations, I'll take a timeout. I'll tell my team to sit down with my assistant coach. I'll tell my assistant coach beforehand, you need to talk to the kids about being mentally focused and stop with the nonsense. And I'll bring the refs over and I'll say, guys, look, I'm taking this time out for everybody here. I'm taking it for you guys. I'm taking it for my team. I'm taking it for that team.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Is this. You guys are allowing too much physicality now. And where I do appreciate some physical contact being allowed, the game is starting to get a little out of hand. I would appreciate it if you tighten it up a bit. And especially right after this timeout, I don't care if it's my team or the other team, start calling some fouls right away. Get the kids to understand that this isn't going to slide. If you want to let it go again, after a few minutes, you guys discuss it, that's fine. but we need to rein it in. And I've never had a ref, when I've addressed it that way, tell me, no, you're wrong. We're going to do our thing.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
thank you.
You're hitting a point that, like, again, I go back to the whole civility business, right? Like in the 90s, everybody was still kind of civil towards each other. Hey, that wasn't a great call or whatever, hey, dude, there was some passion, but it wasn't like in your face, like, I'm going to just kill you kind of a thing. Right. Whereas today, people are jumping out of their skins when the littlest thing goes wrong. Like, it could just be like, whatever, you drum up whatever type of situation, but it's a minor one, right? It's not like a big, egregious one. It's a minor one. And I swear I see people just jumping up and freaking out and yelling. And it's just like, dude, calm down, man. Like, what are you yelling for? Like, there's no reason to do that. And so as a parent too, like, and also as a coach, like, I see the same thing, their behaviors towards referees. They're yelling at the referees. So like, to your point, it's like, I just did this logically. I saw what was happening. I said, if I yell at the referee, cause and effect, what do you think's going to happen? They're going to start boning my team and I'm going to be the bad guy.
Yep.
Right? Even if I'm right, the way I approach talking to that referee about being a jerk or whatever. So it's always about manners. It's always about civility. It's always about, hey, I'm seeing this. What's your take? It's respectful. We don't have a lot of that anymore, dude. I have to totally be fair and honest. Like, I challenge a lot of people the next time that if they watch this podcast and they go to their kids' events, watch for what I'm talking about. You'll see it everywhere.
Yep. And, going back to it, like, the refs aren't there. Even when I tell my players, don't talk to the refs, because if they talk to them, typically they're going to get targeted. And I tell them, man, you got to learn how to respect people. Like, this is their job. Do your job. Your job is to play the game. I'll take care of the stuff with the ref, and I bench kids for it. If I have kids talk to the ref, I'll sit them. And they know they're going to get sat. And when they get subbed out for talking to a ref, they know immediately why, and they won't even look at me, which is probably a good idea, because if they did, they could probably catch an earful from me too. I have a very low tolerance for that. And again, it goes back to refs are human beings. Nobody's perfect, including them. And again, most of these guys, they have day jobs, man. They're doing this because they love the sport. They want to be part of it. So like when you're in a grocery store standing in the line, there's probably a ref by you at some point. You might even be getting checked out of your line by a ref. When you're at the auto shop getting your oil change, probably a ref's there, someone that refs games. They're changing your oil. When you're at, a restaurant or getting shoes or going to a sporting goods stores, most of those guys are refs and girls. They ref the sport. You know what I'm saying? Like, you would never know until they're wearing their ref attire. They're the same.
At my last office, it was in a high-rise building, professional building, right? And one day I'm coming down and I'm like, Jen? And, it was like this ref that was not, the best ref. And she was consistently bad, but it was just like, dude, hey, you work here? Like, they all walks of life, not just, menial jobs or whatever. We're talking high level people. I was actually thinking about joining the ref corps, really to kind of make the point about what we've been talking about, which is to have a little bit more civility. But dude, you know what? I started thinking about it. I'm like, because I have another friend who's very high level, and she refs Olympic level games. She said, even at that level, people were like following her out to the parking lot and threatening her.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, wow, are you serious? Like, listen, I don't need that in my life. I love kids. I love hanging out with, people that are of like-minded sports, but dude, that crosses the line. It totally crosses the line.
It really boils down to like, and this, like high school refs at like the high school games, right? I know that, as soon as they call the game, they're gone. That's for high school and above now, because refs do get threatened and like they're gone. And a lot of times if it was a rival game and it was a close game and it was, maybe some calls that people didn't agree with, refs will not only run off the court, they usually have an office that they have sole access to. You can't get in there. and they'll actually stay in there for 30 minutes to 45 minutes after, so that everybody has left at that point and they know they can get to their cars safely. Nobody's going to bother them. I've seen refs get escorted out by security or police before. I mean, it's, and the thing is, like, again, we're talking about a sport. People's lives shouldn't be in danger. And again, like, at the end of the day, man, refs are humans. Like, I know refs that are firefighters and police officers and nurses. Like, you want to go out there and threaten their lives? These are the people that are saving people's lives. You know, so it is crazy. And people don't understand, unless they're refs at the NFL or NBA or NHL or MLB levels, they all have other jobs. Even collegiate refs have other jobs. They're only reffing a couple games a week. So it's a couple hours out of their day, and they're only getting paid $30 for the hour. They're not getting paid a lot. So they're not anything. They have to have jobs. So again, unless it's a professional level, pro sport level, this isn't full time for them. And even think back to the NFL when they had the strike with all the refs, and they all substitute refs, and there was all this controversy every week. Those refs all had real jobs. They were only doing it on the weekends. And
oh my gosh!
Back to like, look,
I know, dude. You know, so it's the whole reffing thing is so hilarious because the Super Bowl, they had that woman ref.
Yeah.
Okay, so people were pissed because the calls didn't go their way, and they were blaming it because she was a woman.
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Oh yeah, dude. I was like, are you serious right now? Come on, guys. It's like we're just, you know, refs are human beings. Like they make mistakes and, you know, whatever, but you know, it shouldn't matter about skin color, shouldn't matter about gender, it shouldn't matter about like what part of the country you're from. It just should be about the rules of the game. You know what I'm saying? And like, I just remember, like, you know, back to what I was saying about that friend of mine. She was one of the first women on the women's Olympic water polo team for USA water polo. She was the goalie. She was a ranger, so she you know, had firearms and arrested people and, you know, had dealt with the public. And she'd been a ref, like a high level ref. And I think she might be retired now. I'm not totally sure, but for like 20 years. And people were still up under her. And I'm just like, guys, you can't get really a better person to do this job than her. And like, you're following her out and threatening her. Dude, come on. Like, first of all, she's going to kick your ass. Second of all, it's totally inappropriate.
It is, man.
You know what I mean?
And so, you know, one of the things that I always do with refs is I always tell them that they did a good job. And I think, you know, I thank them for being there. Even look, games I lose, same deal. I even had a ref. So this just happened. So not this past weekend, but the weekend before, I coached my 16U team. And, you know, we have a lot of things that we just need to work on. It's a group of hardworking kids, and I love them. They work hard, man. And so they're coachable. That's what's most important. We've had great games that we've won. We've had games we've lost. We've had a couple tournaments where we didn't lose a game. Then we've had tournaments we haven't won a game. It's an inconsistent group, but they work hard. They're coachable. That's all that matters. Anyways, I did take a timeout. I felt that there was an inconsistency in calling. I just called both refs over. I said, hey guys, look, you guys know how I am with coaching. We've been doing this a long time. We've been having some conversations for the last 15 years. Thank you for being here. I said, look, first of all, I don't disagree with a single call you made. This isn't about me agreeing or disagreeing. I don't disagree with a single call you've made. The only reason why I want to talk to both of you is I'm just a little frustrated because I'm seeing there's a bit of an inconsistency in how things are being called. And my only ask is that we have some consistency in it, and that's it. And they said, okay, well, we appreciate you coming and talking to us like that, and we'll work on it. The other ref, you know, he did have something to say to me. He just felt that I was wrong. He felt like it was being consistent. And I said, okay, well, if you feel that way, you feel that way, then disregard what I said. I just took this time out because I feel a different way than you do about it. He said, okay. There was, he gave one.
By the way, what a great like attitude towards the situation. Like, imagine if it was your workplace or a family dinner, like Thanksgiving or something. And like, you handled it exactly how you should handle it for all these different occasions. It shouldn't be like, hey man, like that is not productive.
It's not.
You handled it perfectly, dude. Perfectly.
So we get a technical probably 60 seconds after I have this conversation. And we are down. We're down probably at this point 20 points. We are playing a high-level varsity team, and we're a JV team, not a high-level JV team, right? It is what it is. I'm just happy we're playing basketball. We're getting schnockered. Doesn't matter. So anyways, the ref comes over. He says, after the technical, all that stuff, he says, I'm really sorry I gave you that technical. I shouldn't have. I didn't know to score. I said, you should have given us the technical. I said, the whole reason we got the technical was the reason why you should give a person a technical. My kid took the ball after they scored and slammed it on the ground and walked away. That's a technical. And that's why we subbed him out. And that's why I didn't talk to you about it. I said, you did your job. Thank you for doing your job. And don't ever apologize for doing the right thing. This is not about what I was talking with you about earlier. And it's his fault. So don't come and apologize. And he shook my hand and said, thank you, coach, for what you just said. You made my night a little better. I said,
yeah, that's great. Perfect, right?
Because we can't play games without refs. I think people need to understand universally, though. If people don't want a ref, you're not playing games. And if you look at certain states, there was an article on ESPN 2 years ago. This was before COVID happened. And it was about, there were 2 or 3 different states. Iowa was one of them. I think Ohio was one of them, and one other state. And they were saying that they couldn't even play games unless they were varsity games for high school because no one would ref. They even offered to pay refs double
travel fees. Oh, wow.
No, they were offering them double what they were paying them before, and people still wouldn't do it because the fans were so abusive to refs. And, it goes back to, guess what? If you want to piss off your refs, if you want to yell at them, cuss at them, threaten them, all that stuff, you can do that. But if you have a future where your kids can't play sports because nobody wants to ref, that's your fault. And I always tell parents this too. Listen, I have had to ref, not because I wanted to. I have because refs didn't show up. It was my tournament, so I just grabbed the whistle, grabbed a shirt, threw it on. But I tell parents this: you ref a game one time, one game. You don't have to do a whole day. Just ref one game. See how it feels. Yep. Because when you have to do it, things change. And I do the same thing with scorekeeping. Like scorekeepers, they get paid $10 a game. They're typically high school kids. Parents don't want to do that. Parents want to chip away at them. Like, you know what? If you have so much to say about the scorekeeper, why don't you go sit next to them and help them and stop talking and see how hard it is? And guess what?
Half of them don't even know the game, the rules of the game either. No. So they're just bitching. There's no reason. They have no knowledge.
Sometimes those kids, they're actually doing the right job, but they're writing something down first. So they're not going to immediately punch in the score. They're writing down the kid that scored, how many points it was. Then they got to circle it on the score sheet. Then they punch it in. It's just like, and look, I get frustrated too with the coach.
In fairness, though, there are those kids that are on their phones not paying attention. So
and we address that separately.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue.
Yeah, they get in trouble for that. But
yeah, for sure.
Most of the kids, they're trying their best, and we're really good about
Agreed.
it.
Yeah. No, I actually like taking score because I think because of the chaos that happens in the bleachers with all the parents yelling and the refs looking back and being distracted, stuff happens that, hey, if you're not writing it down and marking it down, people are freaking out. Hey, that was a goal, or that was just, score, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, let's go to the book. Let's see what the book says. And if someone's doing their job, boom, they can see the stats and it's right there. And that's power. That's really legit. Right. So I don't know, man. This is just such a fun topic to talk about. I do enjoy having, been the parent side, the coach side, the athlete side, but all my kids, are now older. So maybe transition into that side of this, dude. Now that they're out, my oldest, she was, she kind of said that she was done with sport her junior year of high school, but never really communicated that, or she did, but we didn't allow, we were kind of obtuse to what was, being said.
Right.
Now knowing what we know, I think we'd probably be a little bit more attuned to like when kids say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. Like you should do it. You should listen to that as a little bit more oomph behind what they're saying, not because they're lazy or whatever preconception you might have about what that attitude brings out. But realistically speaking, you don't want to do, I mean, look, Tiger just ate it right over the embankment. And if you watch his HBO thing, you'll see his life has just been, since he was a little kid, pushed by his dad, pushed by his dad, pushed by his dad. And at some point, like golf, he only did golf, you know, and when his dad died, he wanted to become a SEAL or paratrooper or something like that, you know, because his dad was that. But it just mentally mind F's you. Yes. You gotta like be really attuned to like where that boundary is, you know, and start becoming a better support system.
Is like parents, they make it about them, and it's not about you. It's about your kid. Like, don't try and relive your glory years through your kid. Don't try and live your dreams and aspirations through your kid, because all you're going to do is create a relationship with your child that your child's not going to have with like kids. There are kids. I have friends that still to this day in their 40s haven't spoken to their parents since they went to college because of how harsh their parents were in trying to drive them to do something that they didn't want to do. And like my wife and I were both collegiate athletes, two-sport collegiate athletes. I was also an amateur athlete. And one thing that we've always said is like, look, we're going to give our kids the option to play what they want to play for as long as they want to play it. We're going to be supportive, with the exception of one thing. Only one exception. My daughters are between 5 and 7. They're going to have to do jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai twice a week until they graduate high school. And that's not optional. But that's not, they don't have to compete. They just have to go and learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai because it's a safety issue. Outside of that, they can do whatever they want. So right now, my daughter, she's almost 5, and she's in gymnastics and dance. And we've had a couple of tough weeks with her, getting her to gymnastics or dance, her crying and complaining about it. So we simply told her, look, you get to make the decision. If you don't want to go to gymnastics or you don't want to go to dance, you tell us and we will take you out. You know, we pay for 8 weeks in advance, right? So we pay for the 8 weeks. Right. So like you have these 8 weeks you're committed to. Because the other thing too is about commitment, right? Especially at a young age. Like when you commit to something, we believe that you fulfill your commitment. So you made the commitment.
It's a good lesson. You teach, right. That's a good lesson. Yeah.
You're going to fulfill that. But after that, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. We're not telling you that this is something we want you to do or that you have to do. We did it because you asked to do it. And so she's now, technically today's her last day. It's Thursday. And then for dance and gymnastics. So we'll talk to her tomorrow or maybe later tonight and ask her if she still wants to do it. And if she does, we'll re-explain what the commitment is. It's 8 weeks. So she's committed to 8 more times she has to go. After those 8 times, if she doesn't want to go anymore, she doesn't have to. And if she chooses to say, I don't want to go right now, we're not going to force her. She can do what she wants. If she wants to go play soccer, not that you can play soccer in 2 feet of snow right now, but when all this
I have a friend that put his kid, how old's Scar? She's 4?
She'll be 5 in June.
5, yeah. He put his kid, he's a little bit older, maybe like 7. He started his kid in BJJ and loves, I mean, the kid is like, he's also a boy, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I mean, it was like a super good decision for him to do that. Like, it you know, the kids really respond well to the physicality. It's like wrestling with your dad or your mom, you know, they can link to that. Whereas like, you know, gymnastics, like, bro, we've had some friends that went up to like level, I don't even know, 9 or some, whatever the highest levels are. And I mean, talk about automaton, like all you know, this is the same problem. So like, let me just kind of dovetail this. So with my youngest, she, you know, went through high school. They won CIF. She was recruited to top 10. Like I think all of her schools were top 10 on the standings. And we decided that like, it wasn't going to make sense for her to necessarily be at like a Stanford or a USC because their level of crazy is like way up here. Like the horror stories we had heard from those two schools about the commitment and the exercise level is just so insane. Like you have literally no life. Right. So we were like, okay, let's explore the tier down. So super high level still, but let's explore the tier down and see where that takes us. And we had narrowed a school list down to like 5 or whatever. And we ended up going to the University of Hawaii, which is now coached by one of the alums, or I guess she went to UCLA, but went to high school in Hawaii. Anyway, so she's taken the UCLA, which is like perennially a top 3 teams philosophy, and injected it into that school, which is okay, but we kind of weren't expecting that, right? They're a top, so Hawaii ends up being a top 5 team. They're working out all the time, like just like that high level of crazy, right? 5-6 hours a day. Like the initial thought was, hey, maybe Hawaii isn't like the most top academic, but it's going to be fun. We were thinking like the holistic approach to the college. Right. It's going to be fun. You're going to get to go to the beach. You can play some good high level water polo. So we were having this holistic approach to this. And basically it was interesting because it had changed midstream. And so now, instead of it being this like, hey, you're going to go and have fun, you're going to be at the beach all the time, you're still going to be attached to the sport, we're going to get to come out and visit you all the time. It just totally got shipwrecked to becoming this. She was like literally getting up at like whatever, dark 30, working out for 2.5 hours, then going to class, eating, pooping, sleeping, going back to work out for another 4 hours. Eating, sleeping, it was like, dude, and there's so many times where she was just like, yeah, this isn't working out. And we were like, really? We thought, and so it really took us like half the year of her being in that environment to where we actually saw her on the road, where we could talk to her in person. And it was just like, oh, dude, this is not what we signed up for. So it's super important, I think, when they get to that age, to be of the mindset of like, what do you want to do? If you're totally into this sport, awesome. Do your 6 hours a day. You're going to be living the sport lifestyle. You better get to be good friends with all those people on the team, because those are the only people you're going to see. Right. And if you want to be in the Greek system and you want to be in a fraternity or sorority, you want to get a job or an internship during the summertime, don't do sports in college.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Do club, but don't do like the team.
Well, you just hit on it. I mean, when you're playing college sports, with the exception of D3, because I'm saying JC, any college sport, JC and up, with the exception of D3, because D3 is academic schools, so they pride themselves on academics, so it's not the same string of schedule. It's the coaches there, that's their livelihood, that's their job. And it's going to be your job. What people don't understand is when you play college sports, it is now you're technically working, because you're putting in 6, 7, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's not including travel and all that other stuff. Like, it's a job, and that's your job. So you better freaking love it. 'Cause if you don't, like, if you're not ready to make sports your job, don't play college. Simple as that.
And especially if you're in a sport that doesn't have a pathway to like remuneration, getting paid. Like, right. It's one thing to be in basketball or baseball or whatever, and there's like these potential outlets that you can go to that are kind of the next tier up. But like with water polo, I mean, you can go to the Olympics, you can play in Europe or Australia, but that's it. And usually everybody who does plays for maybe a year and then they're done, because that's all they're doing. It's just a continuation of the same stuff. So It's like, at some point you got to start your life. And I'm really thankful, because we talked to our youngest about it, and she was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I hope you guys aren't mad. I'm like, we're not mad at all. We want you to be happy. So she's going down a path now where she's doing cosmetic chemistry. She's going to make lotions and makeups and all that kind of stuff. So that's totally cool, man. We're like, yeah, let's do it. And so she's done all that work to reset, went back to junior college. And so there is life after. And so as a parent, so going back to the parent thing, you should, pro tips, right? Start learning how to be one of the support system early on. Like start that in junior high. Don't start it in high school, start it in junior high.
Yep.
Be the support system. Don't give any attitudes about what you think, how they did that day. Just be the taxi, the restaurant, and the domicile where they sleep at night. Like literally. Let them be the ones to decide on that.
Sounding board, right? Be the sounding board. If you're
right, be the HR consultant or whatever.
If your kid comes to you with something, listen. I have a 24-hour policy. When there's an issue, we go 24 hours to calm down, and then we address it. And as parents, of course, you want to protect your kid. Of course, you want to make sure they're happy. But life isn't a joyride. We also got to remember, you're preparing them for adulthood. Be the sounding board, and then the next day, ask them, would you like me to help you with this issue? So the kid could come and cry about, I only played for 1 minute in the whole game, and they cry, and they're pout, and they're upset, and they want to quit. 24 hours later, come say, all right, I know you're really upset about the game yesterday. How you feel today? Would you like me to email the coach and see when we can go together, and you can talk to the coach, and I'll be present, about your playing time and why you didn't play as much? Because guess what? Coaches will tell you, okay? Yeah. You threatening to quit the team because they didn't play a lot doesn't always change minds. In fact, I don't know lots of coaches that does change their mind. For me, it's very simple. Okay. Best of luck to you. Sorry that it didn't work out.
Yep.
There's a reason.
So I was going to say the second pro tip I would suggest is enter into this realm of civility, whether it's talking to the refs, talking to other parents, talking to the other team, talking to your kids, talking to other kids. Always be on the respectful side, because you just never know. And this should be like a life philosophy anyways, because you just never know when you're going to like run. And when the kids were young, we used to say, look, you might hate this person, but they could be your college roommate. You just never know.
Yep.
So don't enter into these squabbles. Don't get into like our team's better than your team, because dude, even when I was coming up, like I had friends that were like arch enemies when we were like in CIF and stuff. And then they ended up being roommates at UC Santa Barbara, and they were the best of friends. Yep. So I was just like, you just never know. And then maybe the third pro tip, and I'll just, kind of finish with this, is that, I mean, it's birds of a feather. If you as a parent are around negativity and other poor sported, bad mindseted parents, as much as you try, that's eventually going to get into your mindset. So when you're looking at clubs, when you're looking at like schools, private schools, trainers, whatever, it matters. Character totally matters. Like you as a parent should almost not commit to any club until you go and participate as, tell the coach you're going to commit, but realistically, like in your mind, be like, okay, I'm going to go to like 3 games and see how it goes. Because if these are a bunch of jerks, I'm not going to do this. Yep. Because at the end of the day, everybody will look at them and go, wow, what a bunch of jerks. And you're with them. Yep. You're there. You're going to be that guy too. And your kid, this is the other thing. If you're a jerk, your kid's a jerk. If your kid's a jerk, you're a jerk. So that's where this whole civility thing is super important in sport.
And to wrap up, because I don't need to say anything really in regards to that, I agree with everything you said. I would say, to wrap up, remember it's supposed to be fun, and this is supposed to be the framework for helping them be successful as an adult. I want to say this one more time. Sports is supposed to be the framework for your child to be successful as an adult. If you're putting them into sports to try and make them a pro athlete, you should stop taking them to sports, because it's about you. It's not about them. My biggest thing with all the coaches I hire, with our organization, is we're setting up people for success in life. Not every kid is going to play past high school. It's just reality. Not every kid is going to play past college. It's just reality. What are we doing to set them up to be successful adults after sports?
Yeah, you nailed it, man. That's just it, and I would just tag on one little extra thing, and that is try to have fun, because sports is supposed to be fun, man.
It is supposed to be fun. That's why they play. It's a sport. You're supposed to enjoy it. It's
supposed to be fun. Like if you're not even in tune with that as a basis, you should just give it up.
I'm glad you said that, because I shocked all my family. So this goes back to 2 weekends ago, or not this past weekend, the weekend before, with my 16U guys. We lost a game, but we lost because I got there late. I was coming from a 17U game in a completely different city. So I was in Riverside, Corona, and I had to go all the way down to South Irvine. So I had coaches there to start the game, obviously. And then I got there after the halftime. But I got there, everybody's arguing with each other. It was just uncharacteristic for my team. So I pulled, after the game's over, we'll go outside. And I told them I was, upset with them, not because they lost. I was upset with them because of their crappy attitudes. And I said, look, every single one of you right now, start smiling. They're all looking at each other and I said, do I need to repeat myself? No, they all start smiling. And I'm like, look around now. They're all smiling at each other. I'm like, okay. Feels better to be smiling than I'll be out here frowning and all pissed off, huh? So look, game's over. Who cares? It's supposed to be fun. Like, yes, we're going to work out a couple of things now that were issues. But if you're not having fun, if you don't like to play, sure, you can be a little bummed out. But you should be happy that you're playing. There's still people who can't play yet. Like, be excited that you got to play the game that you love to play. And
dude, how many times as a kid were you playing like up against somebody older than you or better than you or whatever, and they were just taking you to the shed every time, kicking your ass, but you just got that one shot in or that one thing that was like, yeah, buddy, still fun. You kicked my ass, but it was still fun. And I had a good time. And I was incentivized now to work hard and go back and rethink, how am I doing this? And da-da-da-da. That's the genesis.
Right there. You just hit it. That was it perfectly said. That's how we're ending today, folks. Thank you so much for being on my podcast today. This is Stephen Basita, your host. You're on my podcast, Get It. Again, we're on the Social Nostra Network. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple iTunes, pretty much every media outlet you can imagine. So make sure you like us, comment, follow, subscribe, all of those wonderful things. And please, we love your feedback. We're very excited. Yeah, there's a subscribe button up in one of these directions. Or even down in one of these directions, it's somewhere. But hey, thank you so much for being part of it. Again, we love your feedback. And if you have feedback specific to today's podcast, please feel free to contact me or Kevin. This is something we've both done. I still currently do it. My Instagram is going to be attached. You can contact Kevin through the Social Nostra Instagram. But please, we love the feedback, and I love engaging with people. And if you are a parent that does have questions and needs some direction, also feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to point you in the right direction. We live in a digital age, so it's pretty easy to get a hold of people, even if you don't live in the same state as them. We start Zooms, that kind of stuff. Anyways, thank you so much for being part of it. Wish you guys a wonderful day, and we'll see you again soon.